Welcome to the Conscious Pivot Podcast with international speaker, business mentor, best-selling author of Pivot, and your host, Adam Markell. The Conscious Pivot shares the stories and wisdom of people who have successfully reinvented some area of their business and personal life. You'll gain powerful insights into how you can fully embrace new opportunities, increase your performance, and master the art and science of innovation and resilience. So please join Adam as he guides you on your conscious pivot.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Conscious Pivot Podcast. I'm your host, Adam Markell, and I'm really feeling the synchronicities this morning. It's interesting. I didn't know the origin of that word synchronicity, and I was reading a book that a buddy of mine just came out with called An End to Upside Down Living, which was a companion book to his first, which was called An End to Upside Down Thinking. And his name is Mark Gober, if you want to check that book out. But I was in the book and it was talking about synchronicity. And I didn't know that Carl Jung was the sort of the creator of that concept, or the one that first articulated. But I've been experiencing that more and more. And I think that's one of those things that in my life, when I look for things, I tend to find them. I don't know if you guys can relate to that much, but I think there's some truth in that we often find what we look for. And so it calls into question, what are we looking for, I guess. This morning, I was looking for great conversation and someone else that had a really enthusiastic energy when it came to dealing with a lot of the challenges that we're facing in our world this morning. And I was so lucky to wake up and start cooking with my wife. She had been cooking for a while, so I was just assisting her, getting ready for the holidays, and a good cup of coffee. And then a buddy walked in the door who we know we're going to see in a couple of days. It's a family member and a friend, both, and would be here for Thanksgiving with us. But I got to chat with him this morning. And as it turns out, this is the interesting synchronicity here. Not only did he show up and we start talking about something that's been on both of our hearts separately without speaking about it, but he, some months ago, had introduced me to this guy that I found sort of instant kinship with, somebody that I really respected. I love the work he's doing in the world. I was fortunate enough to be a guest on one of his platforms to present information and some strategy around the topic of resilience. And interestingly enough, I invited him. We wanted to have him on our show and share his wisdom with our community. And the guy who introduced me to him walked in the door this morning, only to find out that today's the day that I have that gentleman on the show. His name is Beri Meric. So I'll say a little bit about Beri, other than just the fact that it is absolutely synchronistic that we are speaking today, and a joy. And I'm taking a great deal of pleasure in this moment, just experiencing and really feeling how connected our world is. And it only takes me noticing it, really, I think. So I did that this morning. But Beri Meric is the CEO and co-founder of an organization called Ivy. That's the organization I was referring to earlier. And Ivy does some really amazing things. I actually want Beri to share more about the work that they do, but they are a very expansive platform, more than just a network of like-hearted, like-minded business people, organized folks that are entrepreneurs and running organizations. He's been actually at the helm of that institution for 7 years plus. They're now, I understand, in more than 50 countries. Beri has an interesting sort of background. I know you lived in Scotland for a while. I can't recall where you lived before that, but you were born in what country?
Istanbul in Turkey.
Turkey, right. And then Scotland, and then to the United States, studied at Brown, went to Harvard Business School. So, a guy who's intellectually challenged. But I always want to have people like that on the show just to sort of round things out. Beri, it's great to have you, brother. And I should say also, he's got a great barber. So if you're watching this on YouTube, you get to see what I mean. But Beri's got the right haircut for the show. Beri, welcome to the podcast.
So good to be here, Adam. How are you doing today?
Good. I feel like the conscious pivot is perfect for where we are in the world right now. I said a little bit about your background at the outset, but what's something that I didn't say? One thing in particular that I didn't say that you'd love for people to just know about you at the start.
Yeah, well, I absolutely love people. I love life. And I love bringing people together specifically through learning. And so that's maybe an addition to the bio that you share.
Yeah. Loving life and even being in love with life, I think is a really, it's a tangible tool right now to develop strength through difficult times. We have a book, I mean, it's a little self-serving, I suppose, but we have a book that's in pre-order right now called the I Love My Life Challenge that's going to launch officially in stores and things like that at the beginning of January. But to what extent, Beri, is loving life either been easy for you or been a challenge for you?
Well, I mean, like many of us, all of us, life hasn't always been easy, but there's also never been a moment where I wasn't in complete awe of, just being alive, how amazing people are, like the ones I know, but also humanity in general. And just the fact that like there's so many, like it's so miraculous, all of it, if you just reflect on everything about life. So loving life has been a constant. And also it's also given me I've always felt very, very grateful to have it. So what that has meant is that I've also always felt like a great deal of responsibility to make the most out of it, to make the biggest possible positive impact that I can with all the incredible opportunities that I've been given, many of which I didn't, work towards earning. Like I was born with it. I was given it by loved ones and family and the schools I got to go to. So yeah, even I think in the darkest days, I found it relatively easy to love life because I'm just like in awe of it.
Yeah, interesting. And can you love life even when they're drilling on the roof above you in your...
especially means I have a roof. I also listen to music pretty much the whole time I'm working, so I only hear it in conversations. So apologies to all the listeners.
Oh, no. I just, look, hassles and inconveniences are constantly around. To some extent, anybody that might think that loving life, whatever that means to a person, that you're free of the hassles and inconveniences of life. At least that's not my experience. I'm a great lover of life, but it doesn't mean that I'm not annoyed or get taken out momentarily, or maybe even more than momentarily here and there when there's a hassle or an inconvenience. So yeah, I mean, we were just laughing before we started the show. We have a choice, right? When the universe decides to have guys with jackhammers on the roof above making noise while we want to, like, we're so important. We're filming a pod. I mean, this is the Conscious Pivot podcast. How dare they? It's, it's absurd on some level, and absolutely didn't require, from my standpoint, that we adjourn a great conversation because of some extraneous noise, right?
Absolutely. I'll talk extra loud.
But it's sort of, there's a metaphor there too. Where's the extraneous noise happening around a lot of business people today? You work with business people. You're constantly in the mix and connection with the work that Ivy does. So maybe give us a little background on what Ivy actually is in the world, and then let's track back to that question of what is the noise in the space right now for people that are in startup mode or even in some more mature business models.
All right. Well, in the spirit of stepping out of my comfort zone, I'm going to run with the metaphor of noise that you just crystallized there, and maybe share what Ivy is from that perspective, which I haven't done before. So here we go, freestyle. I would say that all of us, when we're young, it's so obvious and natural, right? Like we're constantly learning, like when we're young, from our parents, our classmates, and so forth. And throughout that experience, that act of learning, we're also bonding with each other, right? We're getting to be there for each other and also being able to receive better support from each other. And this is like the most natural, basic thing when we're young. For me, what inspired me with Ivy was when I moved from Turkey to Scotland. I was 11 years old and I didn't speak the language. I was the only foreigner in my school when I moved. And I had to be basically a complete outsider for like first couple of years that I was there. Because I wasn't just a foreign kid, I was a foreign kid who couldn't even speak and a total stranger. And that was really difficult for me because in Turkey, I was like the most extroverted, well-adjusted type kid, tons of friends, life was good, and everything was well. So that was a hugely kind of a definition of a crucible moment. It was super tough I really didn't like it, but it made me who I am in the sense that it forced me to ask, like, what does it mean to belong, to have community? What brings people together? What's the purpose of humanity? All these questions that I probably wouldn't have been asking at age 11 if, everything was standard operating procedure. I was like shocked into that kind of reflecting. But I did eventually adapt. And by the time I left Scotland 7 years later, I had fully adapted to the point where no one in Scotland could tell that I wasn't Scottish to begin with. From there, I came to the US for college, and moving from Scotland to the US was the exact opposite of my experience going from Turkey to Scotland. American collegiate environment, the warmest, most welcoming, most fun, just everything was like the opposite. It was so easy to adapt because everyone was there to learn and grow together. Everybody was dreaming about the future. We were all learning from leading minds, and we were having the time of our lives when we weren't learning. So that planted the seeds for, a lot of essence of what Ivy eventually ended up being. After my undergrad, I moved to London. I worked in finance, and, London's a place with millions of amazing people, thousands of amazing stuff going on. But I found that it was the opposite of a collegiate environment because I was working nonstop. I could barely meet anyone outside of work, and all the learning was focused on just one very particular field. I then went back to business school, and that's where I got the idea for Ivy. So as an adult coming back to school again, having lived in the real world and come back, I really thought, okay, this collegiate environment where everyone's a classmate, where everyone you meet is a potential lifelong friend and potential business partner, a thought partner, I thought something is very special about creating an environment like that. But there was also something missing, right? Is that when you graduate, there's all this noise. You have your work, you have all these things, you barely have any time for anything. So that ability to learn and connect with people just fades away. What I wanted to create was a lifelong equivalent of that collegiate environment where you're always learning from leading minds, you're with amazing peers, and you're there solely for the purpose of learning and growing and connecting together. So that was the vision, to create that space for that, because I thought, for one, I wanted it for myself. Two, if you look at every trend in the world, given how fast things are changing and how much we have to constantly adapt, lifelong learning isn't some luxury for just some group of people. We all have to do it constantly. But also people are more hyper-specialized, are overwhelmed with digital noise than ever. So real human connection has become much harder to find, real deeper conversations. So whether that's noise on media where there's interviews, but are people really talking, or are they, following agenda? So I wanted to create a very collegiate environment where dialogue and deep connection was at the heart of it.
Beautiful. Yeah. I think just the way you put that, the idea that noise is a distraction in many ways, whereas something that you are tuned into, listening to, attentive to, can potentially really be beneficial. But how do you parse those things out? So if I got it right, you created a platform, and it's not exclusively online, right? When in pre-COVID or non-COVID times, people actually were getting together physically, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. Just to put it in a more clear bucket, I think so. The whole mission of Ivy, but also my life mission too, is if you want to help people unlock their potential, the two ingredients that you need and all you need is learning and connection. That's all there is. The issue is most of us are so distracted that we don't make appropriate time for this particular thing. So yes, pre-COVID, 80% of what we did was in person, and we did it across 8 cities. When COVID took place, we were able to pivot to a fully digital approach. And what that's enabled us to do now is to essentially partner with individuals and companies and organizations all across the world to introduce them to the leading minds of our time, and also enable them to go deeper peer-to-peer. So while we missed the obvious face-to-face, human contact, we have been able to now impact a much, much larger audience at a deeper level, in the sense of not having any barriers in terms of time and space. Yeah. So it's been a fascinating...
Kind of reading into the next, where I wanted to track that to was more of a report, like a pivot report post, and I'm waiting to say post-pandemic. I mean, we're still sort of in the middle of this thing, but where you are right now, report back on the pivot, because I think a lot of people for sure were required to make some small changes. And that's, a conscious pivot, as we define it, is a change that you design versus a change that you react to, for example. So much of our change, I think, is really kind of thrust on us, and we just have to react in the moment, almost out of fear or survival. It sounds to me like that wasn't the kind of pivot this was for you. So give us a sense of, take us back to that moment, because I remember it. I mean, we're in similar, not quite the same business, but we thought leadership and having an influence in a positive way with people through education, et cetera, I think is a common thread for us. And we were also doing most of our work live, face to face. So take us back to that moment, little inside the belly of the beast, and let us know what those conversations might have been like, and then how did the pivot unfold, and where are you in that today?
Yeah, I think the most critical piece of this, how we were able to actually make it all happen, was just really, really a focus on clarifying, like, what are we here for? We're here to help people unlock their potential. How do we do that? Learning and community. So if in-person is not possible, then how do you best do learning and community in a digital world? But also, who do you do that with? Like, so it no longer makes any sense to just do it based on geographic cities, because that only makes sense if you're actually bringing people together. So what was super interesting is first, like mid-March, right? Like when the shutdown happened here in New York City, 2 weeks after that, I very likely had what was COVID, because for 2 weeks I was in terrible, terrible shape. But as every business owner knows, those were also every minute, every hour counted like crazy. Like, you had to just execute and like shift as fast as possible, because everybody was asking the questions, what's going to last, what's going to go away. So we were unilateral in terms of like, this is absolutely what we do is more important now than ever, and we're going to deliver this. So there was zero doubt on whether or not we're continuing. So it was like, we're absolutely continuing. And at a high level, nothing changes. Learning and community, unlocking potential. How we do that, how often do we do what, who do we do it with, how do we deliver it, what the platforms we use, all of that, right? Up for discussion, experimentation.
That's the thing Mike Dooley calls the dreaded house.
Right. So yeah, that was the thing. So the other thing I would say is, as many who've done anything entrepreneurial or creative, whether it's artistic or business or so on, as you know, you do not need a pandemic to have an insane amount of turbulence, uncertainty, feeling like you're on the edge of a cliff, feeling existential threats. It doesn't take a pandemic, right?
Nope.
This is for anyone taking any kind of risk, putting themselves out there. Like every time, even Adam, you go onto a podcast as a guest, anytime you're delivering a workshop, there is a non-zero chance that you will fall flat on your face, and it could be bad, right? You could lose a client. You could also potentially cause, there are things that could also, quote unquote, really damage what you're trying to do. So you don't need the pandemic. Interesting.
I like how you put that, by the way, that there's a non-zero chance.
There's a non-zero chance. What I feel like the pandemic did, though, for me and maybe a lot of entrepreneurs that might not say it, is all of a sudden I felt like, wow, the whole world is now on my level, because this is the environment, right? Like when it comes to the topic of resilience, like, we had in our first 7 years, we had 4 years in which we doubled our revenue, doubled in size in every metric, every single year. But guess what? After that 4th year, we hit the inevitable bumps in the road. We had very scary moments, and it was never because of bad intentions. We had the best of intentions, right, but we had a lot of learning to do, a lot of learning that came from the challenges. So by the time the pandemic hit, I'd already gone through several of those. But it was the first time with the pandemic where I felt like, wow, everyone is going through it now. So that fear of like, screwing it up and being ostracized, like, how could you possibly take something so successful and screw it up? Yeah. All of a sudden, it was like everybody was this equalizer. Like, it was all fair game, from the biggest companies you've ever heard of to obviously the smallest. So actually, I found it a very exhilarating, positive time where I feel like, well, this is what I've been kind of training for. And again, it goes back, I guess, to, all the toughest experiences give you the strength when you most need it in the future.
Yeah. You know what, Beri, I want to track that just a little bit more, because I kind of got a little hit there that as you were seeing that there were challenges that other companies, really significant companies included, were facing in the midst of this thing. There was something you felt there. I'd love to know a little bit more about, if you could explore what that feeling was like for you right in that, that, because failing at something sucks. We get that, especially what we make that failing mean, whether it's at the very beginning of a business or it's, sort of after you've already cleared some hurdles and then something else comes out of kind of left field, et cetera. And I think a big part of what helps any leader, whether it's their own company or it's in someone else's company, to succeed is that day-to-day, even moment-to-moment story that you are internally paying attention to. So something happened for you in that moment when the world was turning upside down that gave you an interesting feeling. Yeah. What was that all about?
I guess I've always got, two narratives running in my head simultaneously. One is this like sense of purpose, sense of destiny, sense of like everything we're doing is so positive in its intent, right? That there's no way it's not going to, be super positive, whether big, small, whatever, but it's going to succeed. That is my bedrock, right?
Yes.
However, on top of that, there's another one, which is, well, in the very near term, though, I'm fallible. I've made mistakes. I'm going to make mistakes. We have, compared to everyone else out there, there's these like, we're limited in resources and time. And, so I don't want it to slip through my fingers, like the fear of failure, right?
Yes.
What if I screw it up? So there's two of those things. Now, the reality is, nothing ever shakes the bedrock, but sometimes I forget it because I'm so caught up in the near term. I think what the pandemic did is all of a sudden, first of all, it didn't matter how big a given company is, who had what resources, who had whatever. It was a time of like shake up. So everything was fair game. So for me, actually, it just got rid of all the noise. I actually didn't worry about failure when the pandemic hit because it was this time of pure execution. I knew we had a lot to offer to the world, and I knew that we could be faster and more agile than many others out there.
The vulnerability was visible. I think if I'm going to unpack that just even a little bit for myself, it was seeing the fact that sort of the sacred cows are not really sacred cows, meaning that to think that another organization somehow doesn't have the same potential fallibilities that your organization does, or that mindset isn't as important in a company that's gotten into momentum or scaled, but somehow we're comparing ourselves to those other, the representations of success or the kind of success we might even aspire to, that we forget that those organizations are made of people, and people are people. And people have the same sort of frailties, the same insecurities, the same ability to both make right decisions and make wrong decisions. And, when we see a company like years and years ago at the outset of the last Great Recession, the financial collapse, we saw Lehman Brothers go out, 100-plus-year-old investment banking icon, the blue ribbon for that space go bankrupt. And it was a reminder that can happen to anyone. But I think it's interesting at the start of this latest disruption, when those tectonic plates started to shift, and you could just see, everybody was dealing with a lot of the same challenges, that it leveled the playing field in some respect. And I want to just be clear, I don't think you got any pleasure in seeing, real strong competitors also struggling, but more like it revealed that there's that we have something in common, all of us. Anybody that has the audacity to be in business to begin with is cut from a cloth that we could say, we're kin. That's how I kind of opened this up, was to say that I felt that kinship with you at the beginning, because it's just on the best of days, being in business is tough. It's a wonderful tough, but it's not easy, right?
Totally. I think that's, when you zoom out and look at the facts, it's not the same companies in the S&P 500, right? Over the decades, it's like even the biggest companies turnover. It's actually very rare for a company to last like decades and centuries. Like, it doesn't really happen. So the nature of business is that the world is constantly changing, and Some businesses adapt, some don't. Things change, people move on, people get old. What I think, though, is that if you're running, let's say, a higher risk, higher return, more vulnerable, upstart type organization, where you have the audacity to be like, oh yeah, like we're going to create lifelong learning and community, like these 3,000 colleges in the US haven't figured it out. We're going to be the ones figure it out. It leaves you open to this extra risk. So, in an environment where like there's more tectonic shifts, actually, I think it's very positive for the younger ones because it's not like that. The snobbery of like the established companies is less because everyone is shaking it up. And all of a sudden, you might be the one that better delivers for everybody with the shakeup. Whereas otherwise, the incumbents, they have a bit of a home court advantage, right? They already have the models that work.
I mean, being agile at that time, being flexible, and ultimately, I think resilient. So it's funny. Going to just put this up on the screen here for folks that are watching YouTube. Great, check it out. And those who can't, we'll just explain it. But this is really a study that McKinsey did of companies coming out of the Great Recession of 2008, and it's really simple. I mean, I like simple charts, and this is a simple one. Resilience, the resilient organizations not only recovered more quickly, but they also were able to extend their gains over time. And I think that's really the thing here is that ultimately, whereas maybe years ago, while resilience has been something on the radar in organizational development and other areas, I think a lot of people thought that it's a bit of a soft skill, that some people are just born resilient and others aren't. I think there's been debate about whether you can actually teach resilience or train it. People can learn it at any phase and stage. And this has been an area we've dove quite deeply into. And I think that's what we're talking about is that when the world was shaking in the way it was back in March, it's just like back at the start of that financial crisis. The organizations that are around today, the ones that have extended their gains, the ones that will be growing their business models 3 years from now, that we'll see, are the ones that are the most resilient. So I'd love to get your sense. I just put our definition up here, but you've got to be prepared to pivot, to make changes. In other words, when things are disrupted, and I personally think that it's better to positively interrupt the status quo than to wait for market disruption or more macro disruption. What's your definition, Beri, of resilience?
Great question. Love your definition. For me, resilience, I guess the key ingredients I would put in resilience is, I guess, like a relentless determination to get from A to B without any, hardcore allegiance to a given path. Like, doesn't matter what the path is. I'm going from A to B, going to do whatever it takes to get there. I'm going to get there. And the methods or the path, like how it's done, doesn't matter. But just that. And I would say when I think about it in the past, I used to think maybe what that requires, like those who really are successful and leverage resilience, maybe they're the ones with the biggest visions, or maybe they're the ones who have the most perseverance. They just have they can take a lot of pain, But now, it's very clear to me that at the heart of it, the most important thing, more than vision and more than perseverance, I think it's conviction. You have to just believe. You've got to believe in what that goal is, right? If you're going from A to B, you really need to believe in the importance of getting to B. And of course, you need to believe on the person undertaking the journey, which is yourself. So if you don't believe in the B, the destination, if you don't believe in yourself, it is absolutely not going to happen unless you get really lucky. But if you're not that lucky and the world is changing all the time, right? Because everything can change, but as long as you're alive, you still believe in yourself and you believe in the destination. No one can stop you from trying. Doesn't mean you're going to get there, but you're definitely probably going to outlast people who waver in their conviction in themselves or down the goal that they're going for.
Yeah. I think that's one of the things you can say to people inside an organization to sow a seed of resilience is to say, A, I believe in you. Like you say, you believe in yourself and you believe in those on your team. And I believe in our ability to succeed, because that's that level of conviction that is contagious. I mean, and we are contagious in so many ways.
Well, let's think of
More than
it.
just
Yeah,
the pun of the pandemic. We really are contagious.
yeah. I think it's powerful to remind people that you believe in them, to reinforce their belief in themselves. I think that's super important. It was my birthday yesterday, and I was with a small group of friends, given the times, and they were very generous to share why they believed in me. And I was, it was probably gave me 10 to 20 years worth of like energy, like just hearing that stuff. But the other part of what you said is it's not just about how much I believe as the entrepreneur and CEO about getting to be, because obviously, I've drunk the most Kool-Aid. So that doesn't mean necessarily that everybody is going to believe you just because you believe. Obviously, if they doubt that you really believe in it, it's game over. But I think from a leadership perspective, the most critical thing is getting people to believe that not only is the destination worth getting to,
Yep.
but that it's eminently achievable.
Achievable.
Yes, there's a ton of issues, but all we got to do is X, Y, and Z, and we're there. Now, is it going to be easy to do X, Y, and Z? Not super easy, but it's not rocket science. We don't need to, invent E equals MC squared. We just got to be smart and execute. So I think that's what oftentimes in my best leadership moments, what I've done, and my worst ones, what I failed to do is to just be super clear on this is the destination. All that needs to be done is X, Y, Z. And we got what it takes. Like we've got the people that can do that. Right. And then that's where, organizational resilience, I think, is boosted by that kind of inoculation, right? Like really getting people to be like, okay, no matter what happens, because we know where we're trying to get to and we have what it takes.
That's fascinating.
Yeah.
So I just want to get clear. You defined pretty well what a best leadership moment looks like for you. What's a worst leadership moment?
Worst leadership moment. I mean,
like what does it look
I don't have them rank ordered, but one really bad one that comes to mind right away is whenever I focus on the intermediate facts and what happened and what needs to be done versus the end goal, the objective, the very end. So one really powerful suggestion somebody gave me is like, let's say if you're having a disagreement with somebody, if you simply just ask the question, how do you want this movie to end? You ask that person, like the person you're talking to, but also yourself, how do you want the movie to end? What do you want the conclusion to be?
Right.
Because it's not so much about what you did right or what I did wrong or, what's like all the noise, right? All that matters is how do we want this to end? Right? And then how do we get there? Just objectivity versus subjective squibbling. So worst leadership moments a lot of times is I'm so frustrated. I can't believe this didn't get done. I can't believe this didn't happen. It gets very interpersonal. And like, that's not helpful, right? If you imagine like a war movie and it's the middle of a battle and you're in the bridge of a ship and there's like torpedoes and whatever aircraft flying over, who cares who said the right thing or the wrong thing? All that matters is like, we got to survive and we got to get out of this alive and we got to thrive also. So I think anytime a leader can do that, like, hey, let's zoom out.
And focus on the process.
Exactly.
That's really tangible, Beri. And I think it leads me to want to understand better your philosophy around uncertainty. So, with like, if we knew it would all work out, like for any leader in that moment, like we're frustrated, you put yourself like in war, for example, you're on a battleship in the middle of World War II in 1943. Let's say you're an American. There's a lot of uncertainty, there's chaos, bombs flying by your head, everything imaginable you can think of, tremendous uncertainty. And you say, but it's all going to work out. Like not a hope or a prayer. In 1945, this awful conflict will be over. And, and you'd be able to get a hold of like your emotions and your way of approaching that moment would be different because you knew it would all be all right. So that's the trick of it. Because in that moment where you're frustrated that things aren't getting done and you want to focus on the process, a part of the reason you do that is because in the end, it all works out. So I'm curious how you would leverage uncertainty or how you do leverage uncertainty for its benefit.
Well, first of all, I think it's really important to clarify that no one knew the war would end in 1945.
Nope.
There's absolutely no guarantee. I think being a soldier is the most extreme version of this where like business people use all these metaphors, but like actually you can be the best soldier and you can still just, it takes one bullet and you're out. So it's the ultimate uncertainty, yet you still need to perform. Even though that can happen at any moment, you still need to give it your best. So for me, it's not about knowing, like as a soldier, it would be ridiculous if you said, well, I will not get shot and we will win this war because I just know it. I don't think any general or soldier thinks that way. What I do think though, because that's not in your control, there's like millions of people involved, there's all the decisions and there's all the stray bullets.
But that's what people seek. They seek control, right, Beri? So in a moment of uncertainty, they're reaching for control. That's where the frustration comes from, is that you don't have control of something.
So what I would say is that what in these situations, what you do have control over is, am I giving it my absolute best?
Right.
Right?
Yes.
And am I fighting for the right cause?
Am I fighting for the right cause?
Yeah. Am I fighting for the right cause? Am I giving it all that I have? Those are the only two things that are really under your control. And then I think, zooming out, uncertainty is like probably one of my favorite subjects. The universe is incredibly well balanced. Like that supply and demand curve in economics applies 100% to, every individual. All the greatest feats that have ever been accomplished have been done by people who were willing to die for it, right? And dying doesn't always mean taking a bullet for it. It can also mean just dedicating your entire life to something, knowing full well that it might be a complete fool's errand and you might be absolutely forgotten and nothing amounts to anything.
Yeah.
But, so I think there's a correlation. So those who are willing to, up the ante and go all the way to quote unquote die for it, or the other side of that coin, to live for something, those are the people. But those people also know that there's a very good chance it doesn't actually happen, but it's worth it because, that's their calling, that's the cause. So Einstein could have worked on trying to figure out E = mc squared for his whole life and still not got there. But that was his purpose, was trying to figure that out. So, and he tried to figure other things out that he didn't get to, but he knew that that mission was clear. The one clear example I'll give is Alexander Hamilton. I just read his biography, which I highly recommend. So the musical is obviously incredible, but the biography is like, you can't make this stuff up, right? But every step of the way, he was just willing to not just work harder than anyone and so on, but there was a lot of hardworking people. But he was willing to die for it so many times, or risk absolute defeat and humiliation, so much more. And he combined that with obviously a lot of innate talents with like a ridiculous work ethic. But let's say the innate talents and the work ethic is table stakes. Like, you're not going to change the world without those things. So what changes things is like, okay, then is your ability to embrace uncertainty, actually to die for it, right? Like, or to live for it. I think that's, but I don't think, by the way, I don't think that's something that I would teach as a teacher. Like, everyone should just like live and die for something. I just think that we all have our own internal kind of comfort level with risk. I think we should all push our boundaries and get, step out of our comfort zones. But it's not for everybody to, let's say, start a business or go to war or like try to be an artist and, whatever. It's not for everyone. It's for some people. But all those people that are maybe have the more glamour, they're supported by unbelievable people with maybe lower risk tolerance, but maybe higher consistency or talents in different ways to support them. So for every Hamilton, for every Einstein, there's still so many thought partners, collaborators, all the other people that maybe don't need to go all the way, right? But can still be part of creating an amazing journey. So that's basically the team of every leader, right? Until they themselves become the leaders. So I can go on about this, but that's a fascinating topic.
To me, the word you said earlier, conviction, is really what this is about. You're creating more of a depth to that word, and to be convicted, to die or to live for it, however which way you look at it. I think it's the thing that moves you. It moves you through those moments of indecision. A person in a battle moment, in a moment of battle of any kind, whether it's internal battle or it's literally being on a battlefield, you can't be indecisive. Indecision kills. Hesitation kills. Just look at a squirrel trying to cross the streets. That only causes suffering, I think, indecision. But conviction is one of those things that cuts through it. I know I was a I shared this story with your group back, I think in September, saying where I blew these 3 whistles. I have my lifeguard whistle with me kind of all the time, or at least here at the desk. But because it reminds me of a conviction and learning about conviction when I was 19 years old working at Jones Beach. And that first summer, we had a devastating thing happen. We missed somebody. We missed them in the surf. They went down and went out on a long search and rescue and didn't find him. And we had to continue to do our job that day and day after day throughout the summer. And when it happened, the captain of our beach gathered us for a brief period for saying a prayer, a moment of silence for the family. It was just the most awful thing to be witness to. And he said to us that day, he said, look, you either make the save or you die trying. That was the conviction level at our beach. And for 7 summers, I worked at Field 4 at Jones Beach. And we never lost anybody after that. Nobody ever went down on our watch again. And I think the word that you brought up earlier was just such a powerful component of that. How do you move through uncertainty? Well, you don't try to create, first of all, you don't try to make something certain that's by its nature uncertain. It just doesn't, it creates frustration. It creates an unwinnable situation. It depletes our energy, all that kind of stuff. But conviction is a clear inoculant, if I've just made up a word there, but maybe. That feels right to me. So Beri, thank you for sharing that. The last question I have for you is really just about your own personal rituals. What do you do to either create or maintain your own resilience?
Yeah, just to go off of the very last point you made there, I do think that, no man is an island, as they say, right? So, and it's, the opening of For Whom the Bell Tolls by Ernest Hemingway, right? So at the end of the day, no matter how much conviction you have and so on, whether it's Hamilton, whether it's Einstein, like without your good friends, family, mentors, could be subordinates, without people reminding you of like, hey, wake up, you still got it. This is still worth it. Like everybody, the strongest person still needs a coach. The strongest person still needs somebody. So I think, making sure to have a dose of that in your life, like the people who will prop you up, lift you up, remind you of what's at stake. So many of those people are alive. They're friends and family and so on. But many of those people are dead and they wrote all these books and, or they live these lives that we can learn from. So actually, I think it all comes to like learning and connection, which makes us more self-aware and objective about the world, right? Which then helps us reset our vision, set better goals, and to take better action, right? So that I think is really critical. So doing whatever I can to infuse learning and connection in my own life. Like I don't just do it for my own business. Sometimes as an entrepreneur, you forget to do it for yourself, but that really, really helps. So other very practical rituals. One is Shabbat, Saturdays, like Friday night to Sunday morning, absolutely zero work, no emails, no talking about work, nothing. I had, at the very early stages of entrepreneurship, I had those moments that, many have unfortunately tasted, which is like, okay, I don't even have enough money to pay my rent next month, right? Like that's how bad it is. And I was thinking like, how did I screw up my life so bad? How did I make so many bad decisions? I was being a whiny, person. And all of a sudden in that darkest abyss, I was like, hey, Beri, like wake the F up. Like, what is wrong with you? You had the best parents, best family, best education. You were blessed with so many abilities. You have the best friends. You've got all these opportunities, just graduated from Harvard Business School, and you're like pitying yourself. Come on. Like, you had all these miracles and you were fine. And now that you're in a tough situation, you're like, so that was the moment I went from working 7 days a week, morning to night, to then being like, you know what? I gotta have that, day of reflection, day of, quote unquote, just letting go. And that has completely saved my business, saved my life, because every Friday night, I know that no matter what's happening, right? I'm like, I can't work till Sunday morning. So it gives me an incredible recharge. It lets me really sleep, catch up, like get real with life. And then there's no one stronger than me on a Sunday morning after that kind of a recharge. So that's been a great one. Other ones is, I don't look at emails and anything like that until Like I've done a whole bunch of things in the morning, whether that's working out, meditation, and little things like that. And then, trying to pause my inbox as much as possible, trying to like not let noise come through. Obviously, only some of the noise is external, a lot of it is internal. But whenever, like, I'm never in as good a mood as if I've like not looked at my inbox for 6 full hours and just got a whole bunch of work done, whether that's through discussion or writing or proposals, my own self. So those are some for what it's worth.
The research is really clear on this too, that resilience is not about how we endure. I think so many people think of resilience or developing that strength in terms of like the Rocky model, Rocky Balboa getting knocked down, gets back up, knocked down, gets back up. It's that ability to bounce back that people think is what resilience is all about. And it's fine. And we love when we see people get back after, get back up, are able to rebound. But it's over time, what it shows is that it really depletes people. Really, it takes a toll on them physically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually even. And again, the research is clear that resilience is created by recovery, by rituals for recovery, not rituals for endurance, not winning the Night Owl Award. So I take exception with folks that are in the space that have, I shouldn't say take exception. I just don't feel the same way as folks that are out there saying, you need to work your 20-hour days, and what I think is horseshit advice like that. And I also think that for me personally, I had to eat my own cooking. I was doing a lot of what I was saying not to do when COVID hit. It was a lot of uncertainty in the space. I kind of leaned back on an old default that when there's uncertainty, I'll just work harder. I'll work longer and harder than anybody. I'll be more tenacious. And so for several months, that was the mode we were in. And then my wife and I, we retransplanted ourselves from this beautiful place we live in a lot of the year in San Diego, and we went to the East Coast to spend time on a little island. And no man or woman is an island, but you can live on an island. and we did that to hunker down and work from that location. And when we did, we started to recapture our weekends, Beri. So I realized that, when you're talking about the honoring Shabbat from sundown Friday night till sundown on Saturday, you've given yourself a solid 24-hour period to just be unplugged from technology, from all that kind of stuff that takes you out of the recovery zone. We started to just call back. We started hashtagging, bring back the weekend. And what is a weekend? The week doesn't end for so many people, especially people in business, right? So maybe that's one of those really great things that folks can commit to, even as a result of listening to this. You can recapture your weekend, because the recovery that you get from that, as you said, you're a beast Sunday morning. I'm a beast on Monday. I don't dread Mondays. I don't remember the last time when I felt that anxiety on a Sunday night anymore about the week starting. And again, statistically speaking, you're more productive and you can go longer distances and help more people. So I love what your business is about, Beri. That's why we really wanted to have you on the show. Learning in community and how it is that, as you said, you just be a positive influence in ways that are so meaningful today. I've got one final thought to share with our folks, which is my waking ritual. And Beri, if you've got a waking ritual, chime in here. Mine is 3 very simple steps, because I like things that are actually usable. So this is something I've been doing for 12 plus years. Don't deviate from it. It's too simple to have to make any little tweaks to it. I wake up every day. That's the first thing, right? So, Beri, did you wake up today?
Yep, did it. Check. Check.
Now, here's a question, because I was a lawyer for 18 years. So did you have an agreement, a contract, signed or otherwise, oral agreement of any kind, that when you went to sleep last night, that you'd get to wake up today?
No guarantees.
No guarantees, right?
Yeah.
So I think in addition to waking up, it's the recognition for me that what waking up means is more than just another day. It's a gift. It's sacred, holy. In the moment that I recognize I'm breathing, and there are people in this very same moment who are are about to stop breathing. It grounds me at the start of the day. And my grandmother used to say, start the day on the right foot. And I think that's the best thing that any of us, or I just speak for myself, the best thing I can do for myself is to ground in that way at the start of the day. And that's the first seed that I plant, is the seed of recognizing the sacred nature of being given another day. And then I move into the second piece, which is what I'm grateful for in that moment. And it could be a short list or a long list, but it's not difficult in that moment to feel gratitude. Was there something you were grateful for when you woke up this morning, Beri, that you can recall?
Yeah, absolutely. Shall I share it?
Please.
Yeah, I mean, I was so grateful because, like I said, it was my birthday yesterday. We had a small group of friends come together, and we did 2 activities that everybody could keep in mind if they like. The activity I brought to the table was I paired everybody with somebody they didn't know well, so that they could introduce each other to the whole group, like find out what makes that person amazing and then share with everybody. That was really strong. And then someone in the group said, okay, let's all share, one thing we appreciate about Beri, like one thing about him that we're grateful for. And honestly, it was like hearing a really good eulogy while still being alive. And it was so meaningful. So I just woke up filled with gratitude, for those people sharing those things and giving me that energy boost.
Yeah, they filled your cup.
That's right.
Yeah. And the thing that I also wrote, just sort of curious about, is that there's such a power in what we say out loud versus just even what we think. Because so many of our thoughts, if we were to have to watch a replay of all of our thoughts throughout the day, I think most people would be pretty horrified. Some people would get locked up. Right. And I think that's all of us too. It's not, nobody has to feel strange if that's particularly true. But what we say out loud, I think, is extremely powerful. So I wake up, I have that moment, I think of something, I feel something I'm grateful for. And then I say out loud four simple words, but they've made a huge difference for me. And those words are, I love my life. I love my life. Do you remember the first words that came out of your mouth this morning, Beri?
No, I don't.
Yeah,
I don't.
I think that's just the case and it has been the case most of my life, that I couldn't tell you what I said first thing. But for the last 12 years, I know the first words that come out of my mouth, because they're specifically designed for what it is that I actually want to experience, how I want to experience myself being for the day. So it doesn't have to be those words. We do have a book, as I said, that's right now coming out called the I Love My Life Challenge, which is 28 days of these kind of practices. But it doesn't have to be those words that come out of your mouth. But the suggestion I'll make to folks that are in our community listening to this now, watching this, is that you do think about something you want to say, or at least pause in the moment when your feet hit the floor and take 10 seconds to decide right then and there, what do I want to declare out loud right now? And it could be, obviously anything. I know when I was a lawyer for so many years, I was unhappy and unfulfilled in my work, even though I had so much to be grateful for. Married, long relationship, 4 healthy kids, but still miserable. And when I put my feet on the floor back then, the first words out of my mouth were usually a curse. I literally would grunt. I would breathe heavy. I'd feel anxious. I'd say shit or something like, it's the beginning of the day. It's like, talk about the first domino. So, what's the first domino now, and what can that look like? So, Beri, this was early for me, a little later for you because I'm on the West and you're on the East Coast, but a great way to begin the day, and a wonderful conversation, brother. It's always great to get together with you.
Absolutely, Adam. Such a pleasure being here. Really enjoyed this, and excited to, keep exploring together how we get to be more resilient. So thank you.
Cheers. Folks want to know more about Beri, Meric, and Ivy. Ivy is an incredible organization. There'll be more information about that group in our show notes, so go ahead and click on and find out more about that. Also, we'd love to have you take our resilience assessment. So if you want to find out a little bit more about your resilience score, just go to your.resilienceculture.com, your.resilienceculture.com, and in 3 minutes, you can find out how you're doing mentally, emotionally, physically, and yes, even spiritually when it comes to resilience. All right. Ciao for now, everybody. We'll see you again soon.
Thanks for listening, everyone. We hope you now have the tools and greater insights to navigate your own pivot. Help us inspire others by sharing this episode and leaving your comments over at adammarkel.com/podcasts. For more tips, strategies, and support as you consciously pivot into a new business and lifestyle you love, join our Pivot community on Facebook at pivotfb.com.